Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dinzik, powered by BETSPERTS.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. Andy, it's Monday. We have 3 divisions left. We have saved the 3 best for last.
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped about all these. What are we gonna do first? Let's do NFC. No, AFC. AFC North. This is a weird one. So I went back and looked at this because there were 2 of these. Because I'm like, maybe is this the only one? So how we do these both is obviously anybody who's following along. We do the first 2 teams on Monday, the second 2 teams on Wednesday, based on, who is projected to win the most games or who's projected to win the division. And for the most part, it follows a similar path to last year. There's a little jockeying shuffling. There's only 2 divisions where we're going to talk about last year's division champs on Monday. The other one, I'll let you guess a few. I mean, we haven't done it yet, so there's not a lot of guessing left. I'll just say it is the Seahawks. They are third favorites at the consensus I put together. It's not like a big difference. They're not like third by a mile, but it's pretty tight, the top 3 there. So, but yeah, the Steelers today, after not losing a game for like 3.5 months, they are our third favorite here in the AFC North. And obviously the Bengals are always going to be, if we'd been doing this podcast for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, we'd have a lot of Bengals early. Although there was a stretch where this team was a playoff team year after year. Marvin Lewis, Andy Dalton go to the playoffs, lose a game, and there you go. Back to next year. So we will. Yeah. We'll start with them. We'll get into my Steelers from last year. They were my Steelers until they weren't. Absolutely happy to turn heel on them eventually, but they were my team to start things out. And yeah, the Bengals, I don't know. Did we have a strong take before we get into this year's Bengals? I think we were scared for Joe Burrow. Never feels good to get that kind of prediction right when he did get hurt, because we knew it was like, this is not a good offensive line. I think, we said we were a little worried about that because of the possibility for injury based on it was a bad offensive line. I don't think what we saw coming was that they'd have him throw the ball like 40 times some games. And maybe that's hyperbole. I'll have to go actually. That feels like it might not be, though. There were a few games. It's like, all right, guys, you're not going to win the Super Bowl this year. Let's maybe not have him drop back this much.
I think he had almost 60 pass attempts against the Browns week 2.
I was like, there was one that was
right out of the gate. They were throwing the F out of the ball.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He had 61 pass attempts week 2 against the Browns.
I like how I said 40-something. I felt like I'd gone too far. Like I'd gone into hyperbole town, and then it was 60. Okay, no, I was right. That's asinine to ask your rookie to do that.
Yeah.
That kind of speaks to the leadership. We'll get to the leadership of this team, and yeah, it is a new season. I don't have a big difference in expectations for this year. There are some exciting things about this team for sure. We're excited about these receivers. We're excited about Burrow coming back, but the season win total is like 1 or a half higher. I think it's 1 full game higher than last year, and we're playing an extra game.
You mean 1 full game higher than last year's result, as opposed to the expectations are 1 game higher, right?
I feel like what is the win? I'm looking at the win total now. Yeah, I think last year was the 5.5. They won 4. They went under. They've actually gone under their win total like half a dozen years in a row. It's no matter how low you set the expectations for this team, they're continually surprising you with how stinky they can be. And yeah, why don't you lead that off? Talk about last year. We said we went into the season with some trepidation and some excitement, and I think some of that excitement paid off. I loved some things we saw from Burrow, despite the rest of the team around him.
Yeah, I mean, they were in a weird spot because we didn't really understand the identity of the offense, the identity of the head coach. It was sort of a leaderless group. They were the beneficiaries of first overall pick in a year that had a clear franchise quarterback at the top of the draft, so they couldn't really screw that up. And it seemed like they were making some investments on the defensive side of the football, like they were going to be able to turn that around on the fly. But we acknowledged it was an extremely competitive division last year, and it's an extremely competitive division this year, and that's going to continue to be the theme throughout the Joe Burrow tenure, or at least his early tenure, if I had to say so, because Ravens and the Browns ain't going anywhere, and the Steelers, despite having an aged quarterback, they still seem to be reasonably competently managed as far as a franchise goes, and their steward, of their team from a head coach at least has an identity, whereas Bengals, we don't know that. Zac Taylor enters year 3, of course, but 2020 was relatively low expectations for them. I thought that early on in the season, they exceeded those expectations, honestly. They had a chance to beat the Chargers week 1. They had a chance to beat the Browns week 2. They got a tie out of the Eagles week 3. And when we did the Eagles podcast, we had a good old laugh about how the hell the Eagles could have tied these guys. But the Bengals played them tough. They played them to a tie.
You want to hear a fun stat about that game?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, not only that, the young team, tough to do, but yeah, they could have won that, should have won that game. They kicked 2 red zone field goals late,
of course,
to extend the lead to 7. Eagles drive on them, score with like 30 seconds, minute left, force overtime, hilariously bad overtime. But silver lining, the Bengals were on a 14-game road losing streak at that point. Snapped it.
Didn't lose.
Link.
Didn't lose.
Yeah, anyone who watches Ted Lasso, that was like the tie streak or whatever. Didn't lose at least. So they snapped a road losing streak there. 14-game road losing streak. Yeah, that is a game they should have won. There was a couple of these games. Like
they beat the Jaguars. Maybe. No, really, they beat the Jaguars week 4, and you're thinking at that point, like, oh man, like 1-2-1, but probably could be 2-2, maybe could be 3-1 if ball had bounced their way against the Chargers. And then the Ravens just pulled their pants down and were played, oh yeah, you're the little brother, we're the big brother. But they bounced back again. 400 yards of offense against the Colts, came within 1 score of beating the Colts. A lot of 1-score losses, honestly. I'm seeing a lot of 1-score losses here until you get after the bye week. And after, oh shoot, dude, I forgot. I think I laid the points with the Titans against them, and they won outright, 31-20. They won that game.
They actually, that Colts game, they were up 21-0. They were up at half, and I mean that Colts game was the only thing that kept them from sweeping the AFC South, which would have been a weird stat to have, I guess. They really did overperform against the AFC South. I don't think there's anything to be gleaned from that.
The AFC South's not very good. I think we know that.
That's fair. They are not good.
AFC South's not good.
Yeah, they were up 3 scores on the Colts. This was a team that was fun
on the road.
Times.
Yeah,
on the road, and then yes, it was the injury. Week 11? I know it was the football team game.
It was the football team game, yeah. And honestly, the wheels were starting to fall off. They had a little bit of attrition in terms of injury to their offensive line. Well, an offensive line that we expected was going to be almost certainly bottom 5 heading into the season last year, and almost certainly a reason that we were concerned about Joe Burrow at just an astronomical price to win Rookie of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year, was really born out of the concerns about the O-line, and it all manifests in a season-ending ACL. But there was more, right? Do you recall the exact extent of that injury? Because it was kind of a nasty one.
Yeah, it looked bad. I remember in the moment we said, like, hopefully this isn't one where it's like, hey, he has like all the ligaments, like every letter in the alphabet before the letter CL is torn. There's structural damage. There's cartilage missing. He's, the bones ground against you. Like you were just expecting the worst. That wasn't a great day, because I don't like it. Doesn't matter if I bet against a team or on a team. It sucks seeing young quarterbacks. Because also last year we were kind of worried about that. You were predicting, old Drew's Farmer's Almanac was predicting a quarterback drought. So I mean, and really we made this year. in the league, you were kind of predicting a long-term quarterback drought as some of these
Oh,
quarterbacks aged out. Remember, as we were saying,
that's a good
like
point. Yeah,
one, you said if
yeah,
some of these youngsters don't take the steps forward, if they don't pan
yeah.
out, we didn't
Right.
know Herbert was going to be good. We didn't know what Burrow was going to be. We weren't
I didn't
sure on.
think
At that point, Josh Allen
Josh
was.
Allen wasn't going to
Yeah.
be a thing. Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure.
Water
All of
finds
those are
its
questions.
level, nature
I guess.
finds a way. So
Yeah,
the quarterback drought is officially canceled. But yeah,
yeah.
we were pretty worried about the youngster. It's good to see him, recovering nicely. And I mean, was it in Raljan? Was it on that shitty turf?
It was, yeah.
Weird.
But I don't want to focus too much on the injury. Let's go back, or we'll circle back on that. I want to go back to the good Joe Burrow game, which was even in a loss on Thursday Night Football against the Browns. Watched every snap of that game. Bet against them at halftime. Lost. And I mean, my major takeaways from that game against the Browns is Joe Burrow's a player. Like, this guy is a player because he was doing some crazy things in that game. Like, Zac Taylor was asking him behind a makeshift, rickety, terrible offensive line. He was asking him to run these long developing plays. And this wasn't like we're going to dink and dunk 61 pass attempts with a short ADOT. We're going to matriculate the ball down the field type of short passing game that the Steelers were running effectively. Ironically, this was we're gonna get those guys downfield before you even target them, and good luck and hang on for dear life. And he got hit a lot, and it was scary and it was concerning. But he was making very, very impressive throws over the course of that game, and his completion percentage wouldn't really speak to the fact that that was an incredible game from him. And the ultimate result of a loss wouldn't necessarily give you an indication that he had a great game, but there was a lot of really positive signs in there. And it's a shame we didn't get to see him over the course of a full season, because they had some games down the stretch where they went up against, some teams with some softer defenses that they probably could have gotten, he could have gotten a little bit more confidence, a little bit more experience, and some games against some tougher defenses that, I would have liked to see him, have another shot at the, he didn't get to play. He got to play the Steelers once. I would like to see him get a second shot at the Steelers. I would like to see him get a second shot at the Ravens. Those are two schemes that you'd like to get develop some familiarity with. His receiving core wasn't great either. His running backs didn't really do much to help him. We only got to see him start 10 games. So still a little bit of a work in progress. And overall, this season was I think it was a bad season. They won enough games to keep them out of the mix for the top three. The top three ended up being a very valuable pick because the Miami Dolphins were able to trade that away for lots of future capital to the San Francisco 49ers to take a quarterback. It was a season where I think the Bengals, having your quarterback already and being in a quarterback rich draft, you would have liked to have been at the top because you could have been a player. You could have swapped that pick like the Dolphins did and gotten just gobs of future value out of it. And instead, they pick fifth. They end up going with Jamar Chase instead of Penny Sewell, which will be an interesting conversational topic we can have for probably 10 years, assuming both guys last in the league a long time. I think there'll be lots of ways to pick apart that decision. But overall, I thought Joe Burrow's. Yeah, good.
I don't even we'll touch on it, but man, I don't want to litigate that because everybody's already done it. It is what it is.
They made their decision. We get to find out if it's good or bad.
Just knee jerk, right decision, wrong decision. I think it was probably wrong decision long term. I don't know how you feel and we'll find out. And again, it's not one of those things you can really judge. There's so many permutations. Maybe Sewell doesn't thrive on the other team where he would have thrived here. You just never know. I think just positional scarcity, positional ability. I would have rather taken the offensive lineman and found a receiver later, but they did what they did. They have a very exciting young core of receivers, a good quarterback, and who knows, this might work too.
Yeah, and I guess what would you say Burrow's strength is as a quarterback? Out of curiosity, what was your takeaway from him playing? Sure, he can hit the deep pass, the middle intermediate deep pass. He can do the Tannehill. He can hit the sidelines, 11 to 20 yards down the field if he has a guy that can create separation.
Yeah, he seemed to have a strong enough arm, and he didn't have that. He didn't have that rookie look where it was like, oh my God, this guy is lost right now. Where early on he just making just like the easy throw. God, who was it the other day who had that tight end or that fullback open for like an outlet pass and just threw the pass horribly? It's like, that just the little things like that. He didn't
Who
F
was
up.
it? Now I now need to know.
I know that's going to bother me, but it's like screwing up the easy things. Like if you screw up the easy things, it's like, oh, that's just one little screw up. No, that's a down. That's 25% of a possession. If you don't, if you don't convert this first down, like screwing up a down on an easy play is so massive. And he seemed to have enough poise. And yeah, I think he had the arm, he has the decision making. And honestly, we saw him probably under a bad coaching staff in a bad position, a bad situation, and he still looked impressive to both of us. I'm buying long term, especially.
Does the chat know who missed the fullback throw? Because I didn't even get to watch a ton of preseason, and I want to know who we can cross off as a potential quarterback.
I don't even know if it was a rookie. I think it was just something.
It was just
stupid.
a guy.
Yeah, it might have been. It might have been Fields. Like, I'm not gonna litigate week one of the
Heineke.
Maybe it was.
It
was. Maybe it was
Lipscomb?
the Washington. It was the Washington game. But the preseason stuff I've seen. My God, we've awarded Rookie of the Year already a couple times to numerous players on Twitter already. The preseason weekend, and I will cut gambling Twitter, football Twitter, fantasy Twitter a break. You guys didn't get the preseason last year, so hot takeaway.
Enjoy it.
Hot take and enjoy it.
Yeah, overreact to your heart's desire. Okay. Yeah, no, I think Burrow showed us enough that there is absolutely real promise there. There is another problem though, and that is the coach. And the fact that now entering year 3, we still don't understand his identity, and we will get to that in great detail. So I'll put a pin in that. But let's get into the offseason, talk a little bit about what this team did. They let the corpse of AJ Green walk out the door. That was fine. They lost Bobby Hart, who was an underperforming tackle. They lost BJ Finney, who was an underperforming center. They lost Alex Redmond, who was an underperforming guard. And then they lost a pretty important player on defense in Carl Lawson, who was one of the more productive edge players in all of the NFL. He goes to the Jets. They lost a couple players in their secondary as well, including Mackenzie Alexander, William Jackson III, and Sean Williams at safety. So huge turnover in the secondary. Really huge turnover in general for a team that you thought was trying to build something. Like, they did a pretty decent roster overhaul here. They bring in Trey Hendrickson for the big bucks. Trey Hendrickson, of course, was the guy on the Saints who was benefiting from he kind of cashed in on his one good season, in my opinion. He benefited from, in general, a solid scheme and a lot of other very talented players on the line who played quite well as well. Got the sacks, got the numbers, and got paid for it. I think that's going to end up being a bad signing. They signed Riley Reif to be their left tackle. And again, in the conversation about Chase versus Sewell, part of the calculus is opportunity cost, and your opportunity cost is you have Riley Reif playing left tackle in this case because you go with Chase. So, oh man, people respecting the Bizzle Brothers shirt. All right. Otherwise,
I told it off the air. I spilt chicken sandwich on my shirt while I was there. Had to buy one.
They stay. All of the guys they do, by the way, they replaced every guy they lost, basically. Like, it was a 1-to-1.
I don't think the Hendrickson is like a true reply. I think Lawson is not better, but you're paying him less, so whatever. It's probably a wash there. The AJ Green thing, whatever. Lose Green and Ross. I don't care about that, especially since you did decide to draft.
Brought in Chase, sure.
You brought in the receiver, so like wash there. I'm worried about the defensive line, or the offensive line, but I mean, aren't we all? Obviously, that's kind of the biggest concern. We're going to talk about that all year. And Riley Reif plus a rookie on the right side sketches me out a little. We'll see what happens. They did draft in the second round a tackle from Clemson. I think they got another tackle. Jackson Carman, the man with 2 first names. And then
Jonah Williams, we have yet to see him ever realize his expected draft status. Who knows if that's going to ever materialize. Similarly, some of these other guys, Michael Jordan, right guard, Quentin Spain, left guard, Trey Hopkins, center. I mean, this is a who's who of who. So, but at the same time, like, it was a very workmanlike offseason for them where they let players go and they grab another guy who fits basically the same position, same mold. They bring in Mike Hilton from Pittsburgh. So you steal a guy from in division who was playing pretty well. Ricardo Allen at safety, Ogunjobi from the Browns, Chidobe Awuzie. I can't remember what team he played for, but you bring him in, give him a pretty decent amount to play starting cornerback role. That may work. It's tough to say. And all of a sudden you're paying your defense a pretty decent penny across a lot of free agency moves. And I guess to me, this is all a long way of saying this is a poorly run franchise. Any franchise that is cycling through players aggressively and is not just drafting well, keeping their own, elevating them up, using moving your cap space into extensions for the guys that your blue chip players who you've drafted and developed. Instead, they're just constantly recycling through a free agency pool of players who kind of just want to get the most money. They don't care where they play. Oh, it's Cincinnati. Okay, fine. Like, doesn't usually work out. So I'm somewhat on the, this is all indicative of poor vision from a franchise standpoint. And, the fact that you have Zac Taylor in the mix as well is part of the problem. I mean, I give their offseason, if you wanted me to grade it, C-. You were going to say that too? We didn't even talk about it. Say a C-. Yeah.
It is a C- just because, Chase might be a perennial All-Pro. Who knows, a Hall of Famer? You never know. It's fun that he's familiar with Burrow, that the connection's already there. That might work out. I disagree with the pick anyway. Again, all the things you said, I think they did a bunch of turnover, but none of it was like, none of those things you mentioned, it's like, oh, this is a clear upgrade here. Like the Henriksen thing to Lawson, like possibly a slight downgrade, even though that was a strength.
Yeah.
Replacing with a slightly less strength. Like all the offensive line stuff, even if you are getting slightly better graded players, you are going to lack continuity in a positional group that needs continuity to thrive. And then Azube, somebody mentioned in the chat too, former Cowboy from the powerhouse Dallas defense. Anytime you're picking up players from the Dallas defense,
see, this is the problem,
or the Minnesota offensive line, things are not going to be, people aren't going to be excited.
Let's take a step back about why this was a C- or maybe even a D+. Carl Lawson, you drafted him. You developed him. How do you lose him? How do you not use your, last year with you had cap space, you had the ability to spend some money, ink that guy to an extension last year. Don't leave him out to hang and then he walks out the door and plays for the Jets after you drafted and developed that kid. And then you got to turn around and give Hendrickson $15 million, which you maybe paid for a guy's peak season. You probably paid for a guy's peak season. So that's why this is an F. This is not.
Wow! You just dropped him to an F.
No, that's why. No, the franchise stewardship is an F, but this offseason is a C-. And oh, by the way, I just got to point out Sam Lipscomb in the chat. There's one very clear worst franchise in the NFL right now. And it is the Houston Texans, and it is not fucking close.
Yeah, they are absolutely they are the John Rahm of worst franchise. They're the pinnacle right now.
The Houston Texans went from 50 to 0. Like they went through the back of a freaking truck. Like that was as fast as a franchise could fall, as violently as they could fall that I've ever witnessed in any
Sam just blanked. He forgot that they were even a team. In his mind, it's a 31-team league. Even him, he's like, oh my God, I missed him.
Anyway,
really a good comp thing, especially when you brought up Houston. And we'll get into this more when we talk Taylor. But I just want to touch on this before we get into Burrow and we're still in off-season changes, but really a good comp to Houston, because the biggest part of Houston is, the rots from the head, whatever, fish rots from the head. And we've mentioned this before. The Cincinnati Bengals ownership group is not interested in winning a bunch of Super Bowls. They're interested in running this like a business. being successful enough to keep people paying for season tickets and licensing, coming to the games, spending their money, buying the jerseys, and making them a profit. This is it's not. I can't say it's a poorly run franchise because financially, it's not. But
Fair.
if you are a fan, if you are a wanting to back them long term, or you think you'd like to back them in the next few years, like things are going to happen by accident for this team to become a power in the AFC. Like a few things are going to have to happen by accident. Like young players are going to have to hit. Young players that weren't supposed to hit are going to have to hit, and every player that is supposed to hit has to hit for this franchise to work up because of how they run this ship. So we'll talk more about that because I think that directly ties into Taylor.
And again, you're behind the 8 ball because you're in the AFC North, and again, you're behind the 8 ball because you're in the AFC in general. Like now, even though you luck into a Burrow with the 1.1. Now everybody in the AFC's got a good pick. Now everybody in the AFC's got a good young quarterback. They all got him now, not just you. So you're kind of screwed. I guess you have cost control on Burrow over the likes of what the Bills have and the Ravens presumably will have, but the Browns may have. Otherwise, you really don't have a huge tactical advantage. And like Andy said, like they're not spending to the limit or really allocating their resources intelligently from a winning football standpoint anyway, so who cares?
They drafted a kicker.
I forgot about that. 5th round from Florida.
Yep, that's the cherry on top.
Okay. The Bengals head into this season now, the 2021 campaign, with one enormous question looming, and that is how healthy is Joe Burrow? How even if they do have a good offensive scheme, which is yet to be determined, is he going to be able to effectively run it, considering the offseason that he's gone through, the degree of severity of his injury? Did you ever really consider mobility much of a part of his game, being able to roll out of the pocket, being able to extend plays, doing anything on the ground? Was that a very small portion of why you thought he would be potentially a good pro?
When he was, I hate to use the words asked to do it because it's not like a coach asks you to scramble during the play, but when it was part of what he needed to do, watching that magical season at LSU, it's not like he's 38-year-old Peyton Manning out there. He can move. Like he can move his body around. I don't think it's, we're not looking at a Lamar here, but for sure there was nothing where it's like, hey, here's a huge gaping ass weakness in his game. There are some quarterbacks like, man, this guy's not mobile. Like he needs to stand up. We'll get to one of those eventually here during the show, I suppose. But I'm hoping he doesn't run a lot. I don't want to see him taking more hits. Maybe if he puts on 30 pounds, but yeah, the mobile thing, I'd like to see him stay more in the pocket, I guess, unless we're gonna, unless it's gonna be a situation where, hey, there's 15 yards of green and I'm going to run 10 and take a slide. But yeah, especially now after an early injury in the career already, I don't want to see that happening. I want to see him, continuing to work on his decision-making, his reads, his progressions, and just all the things that made him good at LSU and made him pretty good last year, even with, and this is, again, we keep inching towards Taylor, but boy, the play calling and lack of things to set him up for success. That's why I'm still so bullish on him. They didn't use motion much. They didn't use any sort of misdirection. They didn't use a lot of just, formations to make a quarterback successful. And he still was very successful. So I think maybe once we end up with a new regime here, this could be, it's not going to be like a Josh Allen turnaround because he doesn't have bad attributes like Josh Allen that he worked out. It's like, oh man, now that we get him with a legitimate offensive play caller, like this guy is suddenly a year 3, year 4, he's like in the MVP conversation later in the year, not winning it, but somebody you talk about because he does have these good receivers. And I think he has the talent set.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, I think there are a couple. So there are a couple of things I want to point out about Burrow's 2020 campaign and his 2021 expectations. We'll say he did get hit a fuck ton. he got hit a lot. He fumbled a lot. Did you know he had 9 fumbles, but only actually lost 3 of those? And I can tell you that this wasn't even really a Burrow thing, because Brandon Allen also got hit a lot when he took over for him. Ryan Finley also got hit a lot in the limited action that he saw. Burrow was relatively good at protecting the ball through the air. He only had 5 picks on about 400 attempts, 13 touchdowns. So he had more touchdowns than Sam Darnold, even though he only played 10 games. That's fun. But overall, I thought he conducted himself well in the pocket in general. And I think if that's what you're asking him to do, he can do it well. And he just needs a little bit more plus EV sequencing, plus EV concepts, like all the stuff you mentioned. Don't ask him, you don't need to roll him out. You don't need to get fancy. You don't need him to extend plays. You just need to do a little bit of deceptive, tactical integration into your offensive approach, and he's going to be able to do awesome things, a la what we saw Joe Brady in the passing game in LSU. So I think there's a pretty decent chance that he ascends if he can stay healthy. Last year, he finished kind of in the middle of the pack in terms of EPA per pass, ahead of a lot of other relatively good guys, actually. So there certainly is enough signal here to expect good things if he can stay healthy. And I guess my gut says the whispers, the concerns, the negative reports. Again, my gut. I'm going with feel
David
here.
Culley.
Going with feel here, man. My feel is that the reports coming out of camp about his general rust and not looking great is not setting the bar low. It's somewhat factual.
It's tough, especially coming off an injury in like high school, whatever. Coming off an injury in college, tougher. But like coming off an injury at the highest level, it's not going to be easy. It's a major injury. They say a lot of these, especially the knee injury, a ton of it's mental. Like just trusting it, knowing that you're going to be fine, that you can take some hits. Like you have to take some hits to be like, all right, I've been doing this all my life. Like I'm fine. My knee's not going to feel like that every time I get hit. So I don't know. Some of it's mental. Right? Yeah.
We expect he will. Right?
Yeah.
He's going to take some hits.
Yeah, he will absolutely take some hits. Again, this offensive line going to be pretty weak, going to be pretty bad. So he will have to take some hits. So he's got to get over that quickly. I don't know if some of it is just true rust, like getting his mechanics back. We'll get to the schedule later. I'm not super hopeful about them starting off super hot, although they do have some coin flip-ish games depending on how these other teams play and who they decide to start at quarterback early on. So, I mean, they have some, I'd say out of the first 6 games, 4 of them are very winnable games. So this, we could see, Joe Burrow's name getting tossed around for, I don't know, do you think he's in the running for comeback? He played like 10 games. I suppose you have to put him in there, but like,
yeah, he's in the running. I guess let's talk about the injury specifically. Now it was the better of the 2 knees, right? It was not his plant leg, it was his forward leg. Is that correct? I believe it was his left knee, not his right knee. I believe.
I am not a doctor, Drew.
Don't fact check me on that. And then, as we mentioned, it was more than just the ACL. It was major structural damage to multiple ligaments that had to be remedied. So the likelihood that he got a little bit of a later start in terms of rehab, I think, is pretty high. He may have even had to have a second surgery that we don't know about. But he likely started his rehab this spring, and he's probably only 6 months into really truly rehabilitating this thing. He probably still has more to go to get 100% in terms of strength and full full use. What do you think of the Bengals' decision not to start Joe Burrow in the preseason? Because we did not see him in preseason week 1, and we are not going to see him until week 1 of the regular season when they take on your Minnesota Vikings.
I'm fine with it, especially if he's not ready, don't push him. This isn't like, oh man, this is our year. We really he has to be ready by week 1 so he can win the division. Like just ease him back. This is a long-term investment. hopefully they have a good enough medical staff, and leadership isn't. Yeah, can't say a nice thing about leadership there, but hopefully the medical staff is guiding him in the right direction, and Joe knows his body enough where it's like, hey, we're not ready. Like, and I'm fine with that. So it might not bode well for early season, but again, this is a team that if they do overperform, their ceiling is probably right in that range where they're in purgatory, especially in the AFC. So overperforming from a Burrow standpoint, from an offensive standpoint, would be fun, would be good. Overperforming from win-loss record would probably be bad for this rebuild. So if he's not ready, he's not ready. Ease him back in.
God, Brian brings up a great point. Why play him week 1? Why not give him more time?
If he's not ready, yeah, I'm on board with that. If he's not ready, don't play him until he is.
The Brandon Allen show.
Yeah, if you want to lose some games, there you go. Let's get another high draft pick.
Let's look at the schedule. Let's talk about Taylor actually before we move to the schedule.
I mean, we've mentioned this guy before. We joked around about this during the Carolina podcast. Like this might and everybody's made the joke. It might just be Joe Brady's job next year.
There's 32. There's 32 head coaching jobs in the NFL. What has this guy done to warrant a third year of this?
Again, it's one of those. I mentioned the ownership, the franchise, just how they run things. It was tough to tell what they were going to do with him because we didn't have a bellwether for it, because it's like, well, they just stuck with Marvin Lewis forever, but Lewis had a track record, and he had a great reputation in that locker room. He got those guys to play hard for him. The team liked him. Ownership liked him. Like, he was well liked by everybody, and he got a couple extra years because of that. It had been a while since we saw a different coach in there, and it was like, this team won 2 games, team won 4 games. This team is pretty shitty built, though. Like, are they going to give? And I guess I wouldn't have been surprised either way. Just knowing how the Bengals are, it's like, well, let's just keep this cheap guy in for one more year before we invest in a decent coach, or maybe we won't invest in a decent coach at all. We'll just move on to Taylor 2.0 with somebody else after this year, which seems sort of likely if it isn't Brady. But yeah, it's just, this offense lacks identity. This offense doesn't set itself apart. This offense has some really fun pieces that might be a lot more fun if you can get someone with some forward-thinking ideas in here. And I don't. Somebody asked about first coach fired. I think this team could go 0-17. It could be like a Gase thing where they just keep them through the year anyway.
Oh wow, you think?
Well, I don't know. That's what kind of. I don't have a good enough read on this front office to know if they'd actually. Well,
if the Panthers surprise and Brady becomes option 1, then you want to get the jump start on that hiring process as soon as possible. So you might pull the trigger on him, say week 15. Okay. The lack of identity for Taylor is really what makes me upset here, because you remember when the Rams hired McVay? We were in the betting game at that point in time. And it was literally a record scratch. What? They hiring this kid? Like, like, really? Like, okay, I mean, anything's going to be an upgrade over Jeff Fisher, but this guy, really? And
they paused on his face, and it was like, the voiceover. I'm guessing you're wondering how I got here.
Yeah. And then it didn't take long, though, to see what McVay was doing in game action and realize, oh, he's got it. He's got it. This is an innovative young offensive mind who has got wrinkles and identity and will be able to coach circles around the old ass men in this league for as long as he continues to push the envelope. You could tell.
Especially after the year of what Goff did for Jeff Fisher.
Absolutely.
I'm like, oh, he made a bad quarterback semi-good. This is going to be fun.
And then the flip side, I would say, exists with Zac Taylor. Like, through 2 years, I can't tell you one game where I was like, boy, they came out with an approach that was absolutely perfect for their opponent and really impressed the hell out of me. No, it hasn't happened. They have a very, very tough time coming up with a game script that is NFL level worthy, honestly, in my opinion. And they're at a tactical disadvantage in almost every game we've seen them play under his tenure at this point. The couple of wins they've gotten because the other team tended to underperform. Their defense surprised in a little bit of ways here and there, like the Tennessee Titans game, the Pittsburgh Steelers that they beat in Week 15 last year. I mean, like those games weren't because they came out with a super sharp tactical approach and that was impressive. And so I will hold off judgment until we see what he comes to the table with for Burrow this year. People can change. Year 3 of Josh Allen, he got accurate. I would have told you that's not possible. And I probably said that's not possible in our preview of the Bills last year. Yeah. And he did. So, a guy could have spent his entire offseason studying how do I run a plus EV offense, and he might blow me away this year. That is entirely possible. But my expectations in general for this offense led by Zac Taylor are low.
Yeah, that's interesting too, because man, like I think they started like 0-10 last year. Like the fact that he is getting a third year, I'm really wondering. Like I haven't even been listening to you talk. I've been sitting here. I've been just sitting. Well, I have. I'm joking. I've been just sitting here thinking, like, what is this team doing? Like, what are they seeing in him to keep him for a third year? Like, all right, he's going to turn the corner now after they've led at halftime in a ton of games. Like they've been decent in the first half and then just piss them away. Like they're bad. Like it's a bad team, bad franchise, terrible city, terrible cheerleaders, terrible stadium. Actually, I like the city, but I'm not sure what they're doing with Taylor for a third year. He hasn't impressed.
You ready for this? Real quick. I'll give you one guess without looking. Who is their defensive coordinator?
No, I have no idea. Like I consider Taylor the offensive coordinator.
He is, yeah. He's calling the plays.
Because he does call the plays, but I know it's the same guy as last year, and I feel like we had to look him up last year.
This is his third year, and I had to look him up again because I didn't know.
Is it like that Louis?
Lou Anarumo. Lou Anarumo.
There we go.
Lou Anarumo. There, I've said it 3 times. Hopefully, I will remember it now.
You say it 3 times, he appears.
And again, a defense that I really just don't have much. I feel for what their identity is. I don't know, man. I don't know. Most of the money on this team is dedicated to the defensive side of the ball. Their highest paid player on offense is is it Boyd? I think it's Boyd. He may be your third wide receiver now, but he might be the guy you are paying the most money to on your entire offense. Mixon's getting a lot of money as well. I mean, it's not a very good balanced salary cap situation at all. And I can see the defense being league average, but also the fact that they are turning over so many players over the last year to this year, it could take a little while till they have chemistry, for sure. I thought the defense played better towards the end of the year than they did at the beginning of the year last year. Could be more of the same.
Lou Anarumo.
Let's look at their schedule. The Bengals are favored in 2 games. Thursday Night Football,
they're both kind of early too, aren't they?
Sunday against the Detroit Lions, and they're both kind of early. The only other game that's like a real coin flip is the Jets game Week 8. All of their really winnable games are in the first half of the season when Joe Burrow is coming off of his injury, when the defense is gelling, when the O-line is gelling. A lot of they're going to need to figure things out on the fly to win these coin flips and not be 0-9 heading into their bye. Do you get the same general read?
Yeah, and that might be the case where it's like, all right, like Zac Taylor isn't going to be around next year. Let's just cut him loose anyway. I don't think Furco's fired. I don't know. But, we could get to week 9 and still have everybody else intact, but that doesn't. If they can't get it done during the easy part of their season, and it's easy from an opponent standpoint, but boy, there's a couple nasty spots in here too, especially just looking at the overall like situational spot. They do have, the back-to-backs into both of their division. Like those are losses anyway at Pittsburgh and at Baltimore, but making those back-to-backs just is brutal. The fact is that the Jets game is their other coin flip game. They're favored against Jacksonville and at Detroit. That's their third straight roadie. At least it's still on the East Coast.
At least all three of those games aren't tremendously bad travel.
None of it's like Southern California from Cincy, but at Detroit, at Baltimore, at the Jets before playing, Cleveland, who's again going to be a very good team right before their bye. Before that is Green Bay. So if they lose those three roadies, Green Bay and Cleveland take care of business. You're going on probably a 5-game losing streak if they can't get that Detroit game. Heading into the bye, that might be a good place to fire a coach. Chicago is going to be a big mystery. Nagy came out we're recording this on 8/16, a Monday. Nagy came out and said he's starting Andy Dalton to start the season. So
yeah, you're probably going to get Dalton week 2. Maybe you surprise him.
It might be Dalton, so that mixes things up a little for that game. The Minnesota game is home, but that's not a bad team. That's an above average team. There you see they're 3-point dogs at home to Minnesota. That might have steamed out to 3.5 actually. Yeah, it probably has. These are older lines. You see what the season ends with. It's just Vegas is maybe going to be a bad team, but you're getting them, on the road. You have to travel off your bye. Your bye is not neutered, but it sucks to travel out west after your bye. Especially these guys have been on vacation for a week. They're like 1-8. We're going to Vegas. Let's see how they focus for that game. And then Pittsburgh, Chargers, Niners, at Denver, Baltimore,
all three
Kansas City,
those 3 home games,
Cleveland.
man. Whew, those 3 home games are tough, man. And then oh my God, this whole home stretch. Good Lord, who did this to them?
Every one of those is off a back-to-back. Pittsburgh, the Chargers, and the Niners are all off a back-to-back roadie, but they're all better teams. And then you go to Denver in December, Baltimore and Kansas City at home, which is just like losing 2 home games.
Jesus.
And then at Cleveland to close the season. Not a great schedule. Man. It's a pretty tough year. It's going to be a tough ask for Burrow.
Cleveland. Here's 3 of the toughest teams in all of the NFL, 3 of the toughest teams in the AFC, all jockeying for playoff position. You get to play them bang, bang, bang. right down the stretch. Baltimore, KC, Cleveland. Not good. But what's funny is that, like, if we're right, and if they gel a little bit by then, and if Burrow is getting healthier and getting more, coming into his own, then they should be a good dog to take the points with. I got to tell you, though, you're going to get a hell of a lot more than 3, 2.5, and 3.5 by the time we get there. If this team is, 0-10, right? I mean, what's the line when the Chargers come to town week 13? If the Cincinnati Bengals are 0-11 and they just got their pants pulled down by Pittsburgh,
it's like 4.5, 5, maybe more. You can push that up to a 6, especially if Chargers are playing good.
How many points do you need to back the Bengals in weeks 13, week 14, week 13 and beyond? How many points are you going to need to feel good going to the window and backing the Bengals, and rather than just passing on the game?
A touchdown at home and 10 points on the road.
Okay. You're going to get them. I think that's where it's going to be for some of these. You're going to get your chance at plus 10 against Baltimore at home. You're going to get your chance at plus 10 hosting Kansas City. What's your gut say right now? It's taking those points they're walking away from. Better games on the board.
Yeah, there's better games. We'll see how the defense looks. We'll see how the offensive line looks. And if we get to the odds here, I think we've kind of given it away that we're not looking at betting very much unless the season win total is like a 7. I don't think I can back much here. There's no reason to really look at this team unless they are getting utterly disrespected at a home game where, maybe San Francisco, again, we only have their schedule up, but San Francisco, Chargers, and Pittsburgh. I'd like to look at those 3 games, isolate that, see who those teams play before and after those games.
Sure.
If it's an ugly sandwich spot it's a back-to-back. Let's say Pittsburgh goes out to the West Coast, and we're going to look at Pittsburgh's schedule in a bit, foreshadowing, I guess. But Pittsburgh goes up to the West Coast, and then and then goes to Cincy, maybe that's a spot where I back Cincy. But I'm gonna actually look at Pittsburgh's schedule now. And oh my God, Pittsburgh goes out to the Chargers in Week 11, and then back to Cincy for the second game, which is not a big travel spot from Pittsburgh, but maybe that's a spot
after a trip to the West. That's a tough one.
Yeah. So,
and they have they have Baltimore on deck too?
I'm not going to give away all the good spreads.
Okay,
yeah, we'll
wait them. Baltimore so maybe taking as many points as I can get with Cincinnati Week 12. Okay, all right. Well, oh man, is this a 2-win team?
I don't know where you find that second win, but yeah.
Are they going to be picking first overall? No, Houston Lions are 2 wins. Houston Lions and the Bengals are all probably in the mix for 2 wins. What's funny is we started out kind of recapping 2020 where they were like feisty, you know? Burrow had them in some games. This team was overperforming. They were covering spreads. They were tying.
Just like we did last week with the NFC North, I think we're going to touch on this again. Not only for these lower end teams, the fact that these, the Bengals have to play the Browns and the Ravens twice, and even the Steelers twice if they get their shit together. But you're playing the AFC West, where you get the Chargers and the Chiefs. You have the Packers on your schedule, and you're going to end up with a team from the NFC West. They ended up with the Niners. So I mean, these aren't going to be super easy schedules for anybody, except when we get to, obviously the Browns don't have to play themselves. That's going to be nice. So it's going to be tough for the Steelers too. So odds are
Steelers got a first place schedule, man.
Yeah, 100 to 1 to win the
quick.
Super Bowl.
Yeah,
you taking it?
Real quick. We didn't really talk about Jamar Chase much, but in the back of your head, do you think is there any whiff of a Mike Williams?
Troy Williamson?
Mike Williams sit out the season. Not as good as we were hoping. Any whiff of that?
Which Mike Williams? There's too many.
The Mike Williams that was drafted out of the USC one that Mel Kiper put number 1 on his big board as a makeup because he had put him so high the previous year when he was a sophomore that he walked away from college and tried to fight the NCAA in court to allow him to play.
Oh God, that was
fight the NFL in court to be allowed to play. He didn't get it, so he had to sit out the entire season. Got drafted by the Lions. I think it was the Lions' 8th year in a row they picked a wide receiver in the first round.
They did seriously 6 out of 10 years, man, in the first round. It's astounding what they did there. Put a bow on that. We've already been very vocal about we're not sure how some of these guys who sat out a year are going to look. We've got Sewell and Slater too. It might be a little different for a big guy like that who's getting down. As long as they've been in the weight room and keeping up on maybe some of their footwork, I'm not super worried about that. But some of these skill position guys, getting your timing down.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the last time he played football was with Burrow. He didn't have to experience anyone else.
Yeah.
It's been a positive on that. So.
Yeah. All right. Let's keep an eye on Chase. I'm not glowing right now about him though, for lots of reasons. Let's look at the odds. To win the Super Bowl, 100 to 1. You mentioned it. I'm gonna pass on that. To win the AFC is 50 to 1. I'm gonna pass on that. To win the AFC North, plus 2250. Boy, oh boy. Some big prices to win some of these divisions that I just don't have the stones to get involved with, even though they're probably not correct from a math standpoint.
You just need so many things to go wrong with two
really
very good teams and this team to surprise in the schedules. Yeah, that I'd need like 30 to 1 there, and I still would feel horrible about it. To make the playoffs in the AFC, almost 5 to 1.
Not happening.
Not happening. Not especially with Burrow. If Burrow's like, oh my God, he looks like Jesus Christ incarnate in the preseason. He's coming back with a vengeance. Maybe I'm thinking about this team as a sneaker, but with the
comeback player of the year, you're getting better than plus 475. If he makes the playoffs, he's your inside track.
Yeah, that's fair. Somebody brought that up too with the Jaguars bet. They're like, if the Jaguars win the division, wouldn't you rather just have Urban Meyer coach of the year? Like,
of course, yeah.
Damn it, that's a good
Art Smith argument too.
Yeah,
and honestly, the the Art Smith argument is even more sound because they're probably not beating the Bucks. They're not beating the Bucks. They don't have to
just like 11, 12 wins and a wild card.
For Urban Meyer, I think you probably have to win your division because I don't think you're getting into the playoffs with a wild card at 9 and 10, 9 and 8. Anyway.
Over under 6.5.
I think the under is.
I might bet this.
I think the alt under is probably the play.
Yeah, if you can find a 4.5.
You know why the alt under is a play, and it's probably a strong. I haven't bet this, and I feel stupid now. But the alt under, if you can find under 5.5, is probably a strong play because of the way we just looked at their schedule. The coin flips are early. The end of their schedule is just a freaking gauntlet of just brutal opponents. You're going to be able to shoot for 5 or 6 middles down the home stretch. Just take +10 every week. Bang, bang, bang. And if they win and accidentally go over their win total, you're covered. There's going to be some middle shots available on this if you go alt under 5.5. I wonder what Circa's price is. I think
somebody just said they have a +170 on 5.5. I'm going to see if there's a 4.5 out there eventually. I would play 4.5. 5.5 is probably going to make it in my account. And then also just the Burrow injury thing. If they are 1-12 and he's not feeling 100%, he might be sitting out some games. All right,
that's a great call.
Let's I mean, we don't have to pull up the schedule again, but you remember what we were saying. Hey, the last few defenses are the Baltimore defense, the Cleveland defense, the Denver defense, the San Francisco defense featuring, they get Bosa. They go Watt, Bosa on those 3 home games. And then you get the Denver front, the Baltimore front, the Cleveland front. If he's not 100%,
you got to play Myles Garrett twice. You got to play TJ Watt twice. You got to play the Ravens pass rush twice.
Why can't we ever name those guys?
Well, it's a mess. It's kind of a mess. We'll get to that on Wednesday. Spoiler alert. But yeah, no, they have kind of a messy mix of guys. No one who's really gonna eye pop like Garrett or Watt.
Fernell McPhee.
Yeah, no, they got to play both Bosas, right? Both Bosas are on that schedule. Oh boy!
All right, let's get to the Steelers. We just spent an hour on Cincinnati, man.
They played both Bosas in consecutive weeks, man.
Yeah,
right. Chargers and the Niners. Yeah, back to
it goes Watt, Bosa.
Watt, Bosa. Yeah, I think you might have said that. Yeah, that's excellent. Okay, well, let's put the book on these guys under 5.5 at whatever the best price. And by the way, is there anyone besides Circa who has alt overs?
Maybe we need to move to Canada and check about 5 dimes. I will check.
5 dimes is
shameless promotion. I know, but I think they have the Canadian one. WinBet has exact win totals where you could Dutch 0, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh.
If you wanted to do something like that, I'll look at that. They have exact number of wins. So take a look at that. I know FanDuel has some alts. We'll dig into that.
You know what? Circa's alts are a little bit more fairly priced than they were last year. A little bit tighter distribution.
Thanks, Matt.
I think that's correct. But you're only getting +155 at Circa on under 5.5. So wow.
All right, before we get to the Steelers, I would be remiss if I did not mention the official DFS sponsor of the Deep Dive is PrizePicks, where you can still get your $100 match, 100% instant deposit match up to $100. And we're getting closer to football. I think I'll have some entries here this weekend as we go Thursday and Friday and Saturday games again. I'll try to do better than last week, although I did hit my only football one. So good for Andy, not playing against any sharks or optimizers, just me playing against some stats. And I'm going to be digging into the news because, not sure if anyone mentioned this, but I had my worst betting golf weekend of the year, of my career, but the best preseason week of my life. So you want to take a quick guess at which one has a bigger unit size, feel free. Because it certainly was not the preseason football. God damn it! I think I went 7-0 in preseason football bets, Drew.
Were you just
But,
firing unders? Were you just firing unders?
No, I mean it was a lot of sides. Honestly, I hit a bunch of sides, some team totals. Yeah,
I hit that
and
second half Patriots.
it was some unders and then second half Patriots. But yeah, I will be doing some PrizePicks later this week. You can check that out. I'll have some of that on Brown Bag Bets as well. And then Steelers. Let's get to the Steel City.
Steel City.
Our friends, the Yinzers. This was my team last year.
This was your team.
Let's actually
people forget. People
do forget. And just because we did spend like a freaking hour on the Bengals, I won't go too deep into this. A big part of my argument was this offense was going to be good. They have a lot of weapons, and the schedule looks pretty soft. And the schedule was soft, and they won 11 straight games, and then they went 1-5 and lost maybe one of the start to finish most embarrassing performances in a playoff game, where it was just like, oh my God, Cleveland just keeps scoring, and they just keep like, the Benny Hill music is playing, the Curb Your Enthusiasm music is playing, like anything funny is happening. Yeah. And they're just screwing up royally. The end, and you could see it coming a mile away with how the end of the season went. Big Ben was being talked about as an MVP for a bit. That was pretty fun. So I had a ticket, but eventually, the end of the season, the shoe finally dropped. It was like seeing a car crash coming from like 6 miles away. You're like, oh man, Icarus is flying too close to the sun. This team isn't calling optimal plays and is getting bailed out by just stellar performances from some of these receivers, and this defense was really doing it up. And once the defense, just by attrition through injury, was not quite as good, and everybody figured out that Ben's A-dot was going to be like the length of his body. Like, well, let's just see if he can throw it deep. Spoiler, he couldn't. They went 1-5 down the stretch if you include the playoff game, and that's where we stand at a team in a really precarious spot with a first place schedule, an aging quarterback, a defense poised for regression, and an offensive identity that I'm not sure I'm in love with. We'll get to the new offensive coordinator eventually. I think that would be my, well, what if this happens? This team still could be good and can compete with the other teams in this division. But for now, if what we saw was more of what we saw at the end of the season from the Steelers, they definitely deserve to be on the Monday show.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, what was your take from we can talk about the 11-0. A lot of it, there were some lucky breaks. The defense looked great, but from the collapse, do you have anything to say on the late season shit show that was?
I actually I'm going to take a step backwards and say I didn't think getting to 11-0 was especially lucky. The 11th win over the Ravens, who had COVID, was lucky.
They were missing like 20 players.
You got to play the B team for the Ravens the second time you played them. That was lucky. They probably should have lost to the Cowboys in a game that Garrett Gilbert started. That was lucky. Otherwise, the rest of those wins were deserved. And I really think you had a very solid read on these guys heading into the preseason, which was that, Roethlisberger, he fixed his elbow. He was going to, there was going to be a little life left in that old arm of his. And the schedule was soft. It started soft. It gave them a nice soft landing, got a little momentum going, got some good wins. And the rest was really pretty impressive, seeing them coast, in control of their own destiny, likely to get the 1 seed before the wheels absolutely fell off. Finishing 1-4 was rough. Some of those losses were rough. We mentioned the Bengals loss, the Browns loss in the playoffs was bad, but they lost to them in week 17 also when they really needed to get that win. They could have gotten better playoff seeding, wouldn't have had to play the Browns again, but it was not to be. The Colts win was somewhat lucky. But I mean, this team has had a good defense. They had one of the best defensive lines in football last year.
Maybe ever.
It was very, very good. The linebackers played well. Losing Bush definitely did not help in the middle of the season. Minkah Fitzpatrick played well. It was in terms of just taking the ball away at optimal times and giving you a little extra in terms of defensive defensive scores and things like that. The corners were fine. Joe Hayden reviving his career was a nice little surprise. As the season wore on, you're exactly right. They became too predictable. The offense was too predictable. They were one-dimensional. It was only short passing. So some of the receivers got the dropsies. Juju Smith-Schuster never really gave you anything last year. Deontay Johnson was a huge disappointment in terms of his production relative to what was expected. You even had the emergence of Chase Claypool, and it didn't matter. The passing offense was not dynamic come the end of the season. It was relatively predictable. Some of that, I think, was the wear and tear of asking Ben Roethlisberger to throw the ball 40 times a game. That was a big ask to say, hey, go throw it this many times coming off of what turned out to be elbow surgery. I also think you caught some of this, right? Whispers around the league that Roethlisberger was tipping run pass. You caught that, right?
We saw that in the offseason too.
He became.
I'm not even sure they were tipping. Like it just like
it became.
Hey,
predictable.
guess what? When they have these tight ends in the field, they're probably running.
Yeah, when he's under center versus shotgun, it became stale. It became predictable, and I think that really gave defenses a little bit of an advantage in terms of throttling these guys. You had some pretty bad defenses hold them pretty low scoring outputs.
That was my biggest. Even during the winning streak, it's like, how did they? You
only scored 24 against the Cowboys. Yeah.
Yeah. Even like the Jags game, they scored 27. It's like, why didn't you score 60? Like some of these early games were like Claypool was going off and they had some really fun stuff. It's like, we're just going to stop in the 20s every time. This offense is like kind of humming right now. And then eventually it's like, oh my God, I can tell you what they're going to run in this play and it's not going to work. Like they did become very predictable. And, spoiler alert, they did not fire their offensive coordinator. It was just like from Office Space where they just stopped paying the guy.
Oh, they stopped paying him, right? Oh, yeah.
They
Milton Wadhamsed him. Yeah.
Take your red stapler, get out of here. Yeah. They failed to renew Randy Fichtner's contract, and and then everything I've read about Matt Canada, who we'll get to, is kind of anti-Randy. So maybe I do have some hope for this team yet. I'm going to be cautiously optimistic, although we did talk about ripe for defensive regression. I did say losing Bud isn't going to help, but you do have some decent linebackers still, and Devin Bush is very good. I shouldn't say decent. You have an electric front seven. If Hayden and Fitzpatrick and Edmonds play at the levels they can, it's going to be a very good defense again, even with some regression. My big question mark around this team is going to be the front five, a ancient quarterback, and if the offense can change from last year. Otherwise, it's like a middle of the pack team, right?
Yeah, and we'll get to the offense changing in a second, but I think we characterized this team well. What happened last year? It was a surprising success story, but ultimately the way it ended left a very bad taste in your mouth. And I don't think anyone looks at their final record and says this team was frauds. They should not have won 12 games. The thing was about, when they were 11-0, you thought this team is going to win 15 games and there'll be a 15-win fraud. But they won 12. So,
I didn't have the regular season win total. I think I just had a few division prices, which there was a second there. I'm like,
that got a little dicey for you. You had 5-1, right?
11-0. Yeah, it's going to be 11-0. 5-1 was like a limited promo bet. I couldn't get much on that, but I had a few other bets at like 375-4. Stuff like that, and it's like, am I going to lose every one of these bets after they start 11-0? Because I will be very mad. I'm always team. I've just fully embraced that lifestyle now. Team never hedged, but I was getting a little nervous there. I'm like, this sucks. Like if they lost that Colts game, probably lose the division, honestly, because that Cleveland game would have been for the division then.
The Ravens finished in 5th, I thought. Cleveland also lost.
I think it would have been like a weird three-way tiebreaker, wouldn't it have been?
Oh, maybe. I don't remember. Anyway, let's move to the offseason where there was a little bit of turnover. We mentioned the offensive coordinator not being renewed. Alejandro Villanueva's services were also not renewed. Bud Dupree's services were also not renewed. James Conner's services were not renewed. Mike Hilton's services were not renewed. Sean Davis's services were not renewed. Marquise Pouncey's services were not renewed.
Yeah.
There was a lot of relative of Steven Nelson. I forgot he walked away too.
Out of
There were
all
a lot
those,
of
who were the
stalwarts.
two most important to you?
I mean, I guess Bud Dupree, although my expectations for him this season aren't especially high. I thought Mike Hilton played a pretty important role for them from a nickel cornerback standpoint. So I guess those two. The guys they lost in the offensive line were all kind of meh anyway. So you're replacing meh with meh. Who cares?
I think just the veterans that you lost in the offensive line isn't great, but yeah, they weren't at this point. They weren't that much better than the replacements. Yeah, probably.
It was a lot of experience, though, man.
That's
a lot
thing,
of locker room leadership,
a
lot of experience out the door.
Losing Villanueva and Pouncey, like from a skill standpoint, maybe not the worst, but yeah, you did lose a lot of leadership and a lot of snaps, a lot of reps on that line between those two. So that does suck. We're very worried about this offensive line. That's where we're very worried about anyone who's super excited about the young running back.
Let's talk about their free agent additions first.
Yeah.
They did not spend a lot of money. They went bargain basement shopping. They rolled right into Marshall's with the giant cart, and they picked up 3 offensive linemen for $2 million a year. Joe Haig, 1.1. BJ Finney, we mentioned him. He was dismissed from the Bengals, so cool.
Kalen Balazs.
Rashad Coward for $1 million. But yeah, they brought in Balazs for less. Is that league minimum at his age? Probably. They spent nothing. They spent no money. And in fact, their biggest addition came last week. Did you catch this? They made a trade with the Jaguars.
Was that an lineman? Who was that?
No, it was a linebacker. They're talking about putting the green dot on his helmet. He's going to be out there every single down now. Schobert. He was a starting linebacker for the Jaguars. The Steelers traded for him, and the Steelers are basically putting him in the captain of the defensive role. So he's going to start every down for them, which I thought was pretty wild turn of events. Because I mean, I thought Bush was going to come back and be good, but apparently not. I mean, did you have any questions about Bush and his performance last year before he got hurt?
No, I thought he was great. God, now I'm getting freaking ads for Brentford jerseys because I tried to buy one of those the other day. Brentford Bees, baby.
They're following you on the internet.
I guess this is one of those that I saw and just kind of glossed over. It's like, they traded, and I looked. I'm like, oh, this guy was like a 6th round pick a few years ago.
Yeah, Joe Schobert is going to be an every down guy. They just traded him from Jacksonville.
It looks like he grades out well. It's just maybe he kind of got lost in the shuffle playing for such a shitty team.
Maybe
this might actually be a decent addition if these grades are okay.
But yeah, right now we're looking at a starting lineup for the questionable portion of this team, which is their offensive line that has Okorafor as left tackle. Oof. Dotson as left guard.
We got Dotson
We got Dotson here. Hassenauer as center. Trey Turner at right guard. And Zach Banner at right tackle. The depth behind these guys, equally sus. And so is this going to matter? Is the main question I have for you. Is it going to matter? We'll get back to this when we focus on the offensive line, but let's move on to Matt Canada and talk about why I don't really expect anything to be different. The Randy Fishner offense was Ben Roethlisberger, do whatever you want. The Matt Canada offense is going to be Ben Roethlisberger, do whatever you want. Am I wrong?
I've read a couple places that Fichtner and Canada, because Canada was like wide receiver or quarterback coach last year.
Yeah,
I read they butted heads a little on philosophy, which without looking, because you don't know, like, oh well, what would Matt Canada have done? What would Brian Boitano do? What would Matt Canada have done then? You can't say like, oh, I know what their quarterbacks coach would have called in this situation. That's ludicrous. You can't say that. But if Matt Canada and Randy Fichtner disagreed from like a philosophy standpoint, it would lead me to believe that maybe Matt Canada would want to do the opposite of Randy Fichtner stuff and be a little less predictable and use some misdirection stuff. So cautiously optimistic, but again, I don't know shit about Matt Canada. I'm not sure. I'd want to hear more quotes from him, maybe see a little, even the preseason stuff. It's tough to tell. Like, how much are you going to show in the preseason? You don't want to show your good stuff then. So, I don't know. This might be a team that I could buy on if this, the defense comes back, doesn't regress too much, and I would need Matt Canada to be good. Like, he needs to be making this, because this offense still has a lot of the offensive line is, as Drew said, apparently you're younger than me now, sus. It is a little, there's some things that are sus about it, no cap. But they still have really good receivers, and whatever you think about completely immobile Ben Roethlisberger, he still has a decent arm in the NFL. He can't go deep anymore, but they have good weapons around him. If they have somebody who says, like, it's like the Lamar thing, like, oh, well, like, this is what he can do. Let's let him do it. Let's let him run for 1,000 yards, and we'll make the playoffs that way. Like, oh, Ben Roethlisberger, should we call naked bootlegs for him? No. What are you, fucking stupid? You can't move. Like, call plays that are advantageous for the pieces you have and make it work. If Canada does that, yeah, then I think we might be okay with this team. It could be a decent team. But again, it's not going to be a bet on team until I see what this offense becomes this year.
What about the fact that Ben Roethlisberger is an old dog who's not learning new tricks?
Yeah,
He's going to do it. He's going to do what he wants to do. This is like Phillip Rivers last year with the Colts. Like, you know exactly what he does, and he's just going to do it.
If Tomlin, I think he has enough respect for Tomlin to, like, say, hey, this is what we're going to do. Don't you want to make one last run, Ben? Do you want to go? You want to go out looking like a shithead?
Let's get specific. Matt Canada comes into the quarterback room and he says, "Hey, man, I've been watching a lot of this Browns tape, getting ready for this Browns game. Their play action is sick. And I know we can't run the ball, and no one's probably going to be fooled about our running game, but it doesn't matter because I've been reading the analytics, and you don't have to have a good running game to fool people with play action. Let's do play action." Is Ben Roethlisberger towing the line and saying, all right, I know I usually don't like having my back to the field because I like to diagnose the play while it's in action before I make my decision, but I'll give it a try. Like, do you think he goes for it? Or do you think if Canada walks in and says more play action, Ben Roethlisberger says, no, thanks?
I think Tomlin's going to have to be in that conversation too. Like, hey,
okay.
It's like the new teacher.
Well, then, and we don't think Tomlin's not going to step on that. He's not going to go there. He's not going to put his fingerprints on the offense. He never has. Why would he start now?
That's right. Well, I know, but I don't know how young he is. I guess probably fairly young, but a new offensive coordinator, if this was the decision by the franchise, and I'm guessing Tomlin had his hands in that, then hopefully he gives him a stamp of approval and they can convince Ben to do things. Yeah, and again, this all goes back to what I'm saying. Like, if that's what we see and it looks like it's not working, and we don't know why behind the scenes, if Ben is bucking it and that's why, or if Canada just sucks, we should clip that. We don't know who I'm talking about, a person or a country there.
Matt Canada is no Johnny Utah. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, if Matt Canada turns out to be a bad offensive coordinator, or it just doesn't work with the relationship with Ben, then it's not a bet on team. If Ben bends to his will a little and decides to play a different kind of offense, I can bet on this team.
What do you think of Ben?
He's last year, damn old. Yeah.
Is his elbow going to hold up throughout the year? Is this his last year? And maybe more specifically, anything to take away from him coming into camp fitter?
How much fitter do you think he actually was?
I think he probably just was
tricking the camera.
I think he probably just took a really huge shit.
Oh my God. We're going with that. It's like an Andy thing to say. We switch our chairs here. Jesus.
I don't think
no,
you use
like,
spitter at all.
there was. I mean, you have this every year. Remember when Romo looked super fat in that one picture? And then it's like, oh, he's not. Like these cameras look so. Like he bought one of those good T-shirts.
He bought a good T-shirt.
And he shaved his beard. There you go.
Yes.
Thank you, Patrick. So I don't know if he's that much thinner, but if that is a case, if he did drop 15 pounds, maybe he is taking this more seriously. He's more open to, and maybe he knows how bad his offensive line is, and he's going to need to actually I don't know if backpedal, do a little backpedaling to throw it out of bounds.
Oof, man. Well, that's the funny thing is that
elbow does need to hold up.
The backpedaling was what gave it away. Pass or run. If his heel was up, you knew he was going to backpedal into a pass. If his foot was down, you knew he was going to hand the ball off. All right. Well, I'll be looking out for those cues and see how defenses are reading them as well, because I think that might matter equally as much as just. But if it's the same old shit, they're screwed. The defenses are onto it now. Like there's nothing they can do to really differentiate, their attack from what they had been in the past. So, all right, they know how to develop wide receivers. So I'll tell you that much, man. Oof, these guys all should be violently good again, which is amazing. Some of these other teams can't ever seem to get it done, and the Steelers can't ever seem to fail at this. O-line is something that is another huge potential red flag for reasons that aren't obvious. I know that at face value, big deal. Ben gets that out of his hand so fast anyway. Who cares? We don't want a team to be relying on the run anyway. Who cares? Like, yeah, okay, well, they can't put away a lead. They're going to be in closer games. So we won't lay points with them. That's fine. There's not these aren't first order problems if your offensive line is especially poor if you are strong in a lot of other places. That said, this team and their mission and all of their statements in the offseason and their draft of Najee Harris were all like, well, we're going to be a physical team again. We're going to run the ball more. That's our problem. We're not running it well enough. So we're going to invest in there. Get a running back who can run it more. That never works. It's not you don't fix your running game when you have a horrific O-line by getting a good running back. That does not work. I don't think I can think of a single team that took that approach that had a successful outcome. Can you?
No, it doesn't work. And the fact is too that the running backs, they used about 3 guys last year on the regular and a few others, but the running backs were contacted before they got to the line of scrimmage more than anybody in the league. It was an issue last year. It doesn't matter. It's not like this guy is so much better as a rookie than all those guys that he's going. Cause it doesn't matter if you had, our Lord and Savior Barry Sanders back there. If somebody or somebody's are in the backfield when he's getting the ball, things aren't going to turn out well. That's not a running back problem. That's a offensive line. That's a blocking problem. So it doesn't matter if you get a better running back if you can't keep people out of the backfield for more than 2 seconds. So that's going to be an issue. And the fact is that their running scheme wasn't great. Again, this goes back to maybe Matt Canada fixes some of that if that is a thing. Again, we'll have to see how Matt Canada does. Sounds like it's like that superhero from the last Toy Story. Like the dirt bike guy with the mustache. That's what I think of when it was okay. Like the third one's still the GOAT, but yeah, Matt Canada sounds like some sort of superhero from the North. Like they have knockoff Marvel up there. Anyway, the O-line, it was bad. It's probably going to be as bad. They lost veteran leadership to it, and if that's an issue, I don't figure this running game works any better than it did last year. They got it from the top down. They said ownership said Rooney, which it's never good to be answering to a Rooney. And when they did, he said, like, we're not going to be a bad running team anymore. That's why everybody in the entire world of mock drafts, like, well, they're taking Najee Harris then. So when it comes down from the top, it's almost like the Gettleman stuff, but worse. Like, oh man,
it's way worse.
Our owner is saying we have to run the ball more.
It's bad. It's bad.
I'm not excited.
I hate it when this happens. And this is this is one of those things that's the car accident is happening. You can see it happening. You know it's going to take a while to actually happen, but there's no doubt in your mind the car accident is going to happen, right?
Yeah, like one of those dreams where it's in slow motion.
It's going to happen. But let's look at the schedule and figure out when it's going to happen, because that's kind of important here.
Yeah.
A lot of blue at the top of the schedule. A lot of blue. In fact,
nice soft
through
start.
10 weeks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sorry, 5 games out of 9 where you are more than a field goal favorite. Home versus the Raiders, you're getting 5. You're laying 5.5. Home versus Cincinnati, you're laying 6. Home versus Denver, you're laying 4.5. Home versus Chicago, you're laying 5.5. Home versus Detroit, you're laying 7.5. There is, and this again reflects a cooler temperature on this team than they had last year, right? Like the market, like make no mistake, the market is cold as hell on the Steelers. In fact, look no further than their week 1 opponent against Buffalo. That number, you remember, we were just talking about 2020. Remember late in the season, Steelers go to Buffalo in the thick of the playoff hunt, trying to hold on to the 1 seed.
Mm-hmm.
You remember what that spread was?
It's like a 2.5.
2. Buffalo -2 at home in week 15.
Yeah.
What happened? Or I think actually week 14. I don't want to misstate this. Yeah, week 14. The 11-1 Bills coming off a loss against the Washington football team. 2-point dogs to the Bills. What is this team coming into this season is healthier than that team was. It's got Bush. It's got a healthier, rejuvenated arm on Roethlisberger. He was gassed by that point in the season. It's tough for me. It's reloaded in a couple places. We went through all this. Bills didn't do anything.
Probably a combination of just the market is higher on the Bills this year too. And even if the Bills didn't do anything, enough of the market has realized like, all right, like we saw a whole year of it. They won in the playoffs. Like this is a good team with a good young quarterback and good leadership, good coaching. Like what's your main negative about the Bills? You know, I know we already did that, but like main knock
Their
on the
pass
Bills
rush isn't all that impressive.
Yeah, the
Their
defensive
second corner,
front,
CB2 can be picked on.
running backs aren't that strong, but they don't matter. Yeah. So, yeah, like Buffalo's going to be high in the market, and they have been. And then this is just a team that's going to be lower in the market based off what we saw last. Like people are convinced what we saw at the end of the year is what we're going to get. Like a team that if the defense isn't throttling people and the receivers aren't doing magical things, and Big Ben's throwing 6 yards down the field on average, it's not going to be a winning combination. And, you take both of those and you move it out 4 points.
You're
plus
5 points now because it's 7. Now it's 7.
Fans in
now
the stands.
7. Now it's 7 though. So the continued slide, the fans in the stands is real. That's true. That's a good point. I was 0 home field advantage built into that number last year. Now you go and put a couple points. That's fine. But yeah, there's some extrapolation of the slide we saw from Pittsburgh through December and January. You're continuing that downtrend. The slide you saw up of Buffalo between the Pittsburgh game and the end of the season, you're continuing that up. You're adding extra home field advantage, and now we're getting Pittsburgh as a 7-point dog week 1. That's a big adjustment. It's too much for me. I'm going to take the 7.
I wish you all the luck in the world.
Okay.
It's too many. I mean, you're right.
There's other more fun games to bet week 1 though. That's where you're going.
I don't know. I'm gonna have to look at that. I want to look at my power rankings on that now. I think I'd probably have it at like a 6.
Do you think I'm going to get a flat 7 or a 7.5 even? Should I wait?
I don't think you get a 7.5. If you get like a 7 even money, people gobble that up.
Do you think I need a 7 now, or is it going to get back to 6.5? I don't want to miss my 7.
What could happen in the preseason other than just more people getting involved in week 1 markets? I would take it now. I don't think you get 7.5 is a big number for division champs.
Okay. All right, I'll just take the 7 now. I'll do it.
Easy, obviously, you can see if you're looking at this on the stream or you're watching this on YouTube later, you can see easier roads away. It's Vegas and Cincy at home, Denver at home, Green Bay on the road isn't great. Chicago and Detroit later on at home. Some tough ones at the end of the year. We mentioned this with Cincy. Like you have to play, and this is a first place schedule plus the AFC West, plus the NFC North with Green Bay, Baltimore, Kansas City, Cleveland, Tennessee, Baltimore, the Chargers, Cleveland. Like just a shitload of playoff teams in here, and that's why
this is wild. You want to check this out? So after that opener at Buffalo, where they had to go face the fans, the Bills Mafia is going to give them a 5-point home field advantage in that game.
At least.
After that Bills game, they only have to travel once
until the bye,
until Halloween. Yeah, week 8. And that's the next time they have to go on the road.
And Pittsburgh to Cleveland is like a car ride.
Pittsburgh to Green Bay is not even that far.
I've driven from Pittsburgh to Canton, and it was like a nice little easy jaunt. Yeah, but that's not much. Eventually they do. We did mention this when you're talking Cincy. They have to do the West Coast trip followed by the game at Cincy, but then that's their only back-to-back. Everything else is split up. The Minnesota game has Tennessee in between that and KC, which has Cleveland in between that and Baltimore. Oh my God. If Tennessee is good, if Minnesota is good, Baltimore, Minnesota, Tennessee. Yeah. Can you imagine like if the Minnesota offense works with, Cook and Jefferson and Thielen and they don't all get COVID and Tennessee doesn't have a huge regression, that's a rough landing for this team.
So bad. No, week 11 through week 18 is so bad. It's so
we
bad.
need this team to really play well at the beginning of the season to depress our Cleveland to win the division numbers, or Baltimore, honestly, or both, or just the no on this.
Just the no on this. Yes, and just to get their market price up like last year. Run it back. 11-0. Let's go. 11-0, and then finish with this. Just get your ass handed to you week in, week out down the stretch. We'll bet against them every week. This feels like revisiting history. I got to tell you, man. The schedule is backloaded.
I feel like I played a bunch of their team total overs last year too. It's like, man, I don't know if they cover this, but they're scoring 25 points.
They got a bunch of bad defenses on this list.
Yeah, that might be the thing. Again, I'm very, 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 tentative about backing this offense, especially with the unknown. Like I posed a lot of positives to like, oh, Matt Canada might be good, but if he's not, I don't know if it's Fichtner level or worse.
Yeah, let's take our. I think we covered the Pittsburgh schedule and this same conversation a lot in the schedule podcast, so people maybe already have heard some of this. Let's take this to like a grad level kind of discussion. You ready? The market is cold on the Steelers. We covered this. They've adjusted them down. People are betting under on their win total. People are expecting this team to be. People are saying, "Hey, I'd rather have them 4th in the AFC North than to win the Super Bowl." Like that's the better play. Like some market sentiment, momentum priors that are all. This team is going to be significantly worse than the team we saw last year. Okay, if they win against Buffalo week 1, which is not crazy. If they win their first 3 games, if they give Green Bay a game, if they're 4-2 or 5-1, what is it going to be like? Everyone in the market who had these low priors is going to be doing an apology tour, and the market really is going to really upgrade their power number, and we're going to get an opportunity to fade them? Or is it like it's only going to take one bad game in the first half of the season from these guys for everybody to be like, aha, I knew it, they're going to suck? You know what I mean? Like, what's the elasticity on how quickly the market will react to upgrade them if they perform well in the early part of the season?
I think it'll be slower to upgrade them than it will be to just leave them put. Like even a middling performance, like they beat the ever living shit out of the Vegas Raiders defense. They looked really good against the Bengals. They won at home versus Denver, but like, they lost convincingly to two playoff teams, probably division winners, at Green Bay, at Buffalo, and then maybe the Seattle game doesn't go well. They're 3-3 going into that bye, and it's like the market is not, excited about that. The market is
no.
right where it's at. Like a middling team might even be a downgrade. Like,
Yeah, okay.
even though they're implied to win right around their season win total, like it might be a downgrade in the market. Whereas they'd have to, like the Green Bay game would have to be, they'd have to win Green Bay and Seattle. And I feel like the market would still be a little sketched out just knowing how backloaded that schedule is.
They only have to try. Even that at Cleveland is not a big deal, like you said.
They don't have
November
much.
21st. November
Kansas City's
21st is like their first real road trip. November 21st. Like this team is going to have a very comfortable, lots of time at home, lots of time to rest and recuperate and plan. Very into their normal schedules.
Only the West Coast time.
This is what the Tennessee Titans had last year that made me kind of bullish on them. Like they had this just very, very light load of travel early in the season that was pretty advantageous ultimately.
I mean, just overall, like the traveling to Baltimore, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Green Bay, and Buffalo.
Not a big deal.
Are not big deals. You have the one trip out to the Chargers and one trip out to Kansas City and Minnesota. I guess Minnesota from Pittsburgh is probably like a 2-hour flight. Like, but like really, even the away games, it's kind of a light schedule as far as travel. It's tough as far as competition.
Yeah, and it's all backloaded. It's all backloaded.
It is very backloaded. I'm just trying to think. Like, it's tough to say like how to approach that based on. You almost need something to happen. You need them to start out hot and have the market react to it, so you can bet on Cleveland or Baltimore or whoever you want. But let's say that doesn't happen. How do you approach that second half of the season? Just by like the market is what it is.
Like against them.
Dump against them if the number's right, or just stay away, I guess.
Probably unders, honestly, because if they're insisting on we're going to get Najee Harris going every single game, and they're a team that's shooting for under 500, and they're playing against some good offenses, the offenses, I mean it's probably. You remember 2 years ago when Roethlisberger was hurt, and they were doing it was the Mason Rudolph show. You remember that?
Yeah, Duck too.
You remember the Duck Rudolph Mason Hodges show? That was like a dead nut under team. If Roethlisberger in Canada doesn't work out and they're insisting to run, that's probably where my mind is at. This team is, these games are going to be in the 30s.
Yeah, that Detroit game could be like 14-10.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you nailed it. Yeah. I'm not taking Detroit, but I'm happy to take under 42 or whatever the hell the total.
Yeah, no, in the Baltimore game, just like we're gonna stop Lamar and they lose like 17-3.
Exactly. You want to guess what the current total is for that Detroit game? You want to guess
44?
45.5.
Wow, higher than I thought.
Total for the Baltimore also 45.5. Pitt at Chargers 48. That's interesting.
What about at Cincy week 12? Last one.
46.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested in that under, especially since they'll have traveled from LA. Especially, it's interesting.
Interesting indeed. All right, let's look at the odds and put a bow on the Steel City.
Thought that was a good discussion. Definitely, I needed to think through a little bit what the market was how they're gonna react to this team, because it does feel like this is one where a lot of people have taken a stand against these guys. And I think the schedule doesn't warrant doing that now.
No. 40-1 to win the Super Bowl, 17.5-1 to win the AFC, and 3.75-1 to win the AFC North. Like just
20% chance to win the AFC North.
I'd want I'd need like 5.
Yeah.
4.5 plus 450 maybe.
It's close to my buy point on that, but not enough.
To make the playoffs is interesting. Have you run through sims on that as far as who you think makes the playoffs from the NFC or AFC? Because I think it's you probably go Chiefs Chargers.
Yes.
You go Chiefs Chargers Bills Ravens Browns.
Yes.
The AFC South gets 1.
Yes.
and that leaves you with a wild card that is probably
one
stuck
wild
up
card.
between
Pittsburgh,
mm,
Denver, Miami.
The Colts are probably out of it, so I'm giving the South just one. So it's Pittsburgh, Denver, Miami, and maybe the Patriots if Mac
Maybe
works.
the Patriots. Yeah.
That's not a big.
I think it's Pittsburgh, Denver, and Miami to get one spot. So I would need closer to plus
closer to 2-1.
Yeah.
Maybe later in the season if that's a market that's up throughout the season, and then
you know what
total is 8.5.
We really just need that to make the playoffs. We just need 7-2. We just need a 7-2 start, and then that yes is minus 200, and we can play the no at plus 160.
There's the bet.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, that is the bet is on October whatever.
Or really, yeah, November after the Detroit game. The Detroit game is November 14th. So November 15th, that Monday. We'll shop for or no. Right before they have to go at LA.
People hang those all year.
They show up about mid-season.
Yeah, later in the year, I think those are usually up. So we'll look for those. And yeah, the win total, I'm saying it's pretty sharp.
I agree. 8.5.
I don't want to bet
to. It opened to 9. It's been bet down. You're counting on a lot of things to go wrong for that under. If you're laying minus 140, that's going to be a sweat, I think.
Yeah, I don't need that in my life. So, all right, let us know what you think of the Steelers. Obviously, I'd like to hear some people hit us on Twitter with some pretty good comments and opinions once in a while.
Yeah, they do, and I think a lot of people have thought through the Steelers and they've thought through them carefully. Like this is not a team that people are just kind of yawn. Who cares? Let's move on. This is a team where you generate a lot of pretty visceral reaction. People are
two more teams tonight. These teams are boring. These teams are kind of boring.
Oh no, this was a great one.
No, I know. There's lots to talk about, but like they might just be boring. Like it might just be like, oh, the market was right. Like Cincinnati's going to win 3 games, the Steelers are going to win 8. Like it might just be like what we thought they were. Is
well, like, the market is wrong if the Cincinnati only wins 3.
I mean, there's some deviance in there though. Once you get to the far end of the spectrum on that end, the difference between 1 and 5 isn't big. I mean, to the market it is betting, but sure, but. A team that wins fewer than 5-6 games tends to lose a lot of games by, a lot of coin flip games that might have happened. So, and that's kind of what they did. They lose 1-score games, Cincinnati. So Cincy and Pittsburgh, as Drew says, bows are put on them. We'll get to, this will be a good one. Who do you just knee jerk, say it without even thinking who wins the division?
Browns.
Yeah, maybe I'll have to take a Ravens position just so we can go Skip and Stephen A on it.
Well, we got to talk.
I agree.
We got to talk to our buddy Suma, who has Ravens eyes for the Ravens.
Yeah, I know some smart people who like the raisins too, the California raisins. But yeah, we'll get to Ravens and Chargers, Chiefs, Chargers.
Nothing
Browns.
that's coming out of Ravens camp, by the way, has me feeling all that good about them.
No, Bateman's hurt. They've had injuries to all their wide receivers. I'm not super excited about that.
Yeah,
we'll get to those Wednesdays.
A lot of stuff that's just like, man, these guys can't catch a break. Don't love. Yeah, Wednesday's going to be probably the most fun preview pod we do. Maybe that one and Rams Niners are probably going to be the 2 funnest ones we do. Also.
Chargers Chiefs
is going to be fun also. Yeah, that'll be great. Yeah, that'll be a great one. Those will be our 3 best, and we'll do them all on Wednesdays. Where I'm usually in general I'm a little sharper on Wednesday because doing a little too much drinking on the weekend. But that's
seltzer last night. All right, let's call it a day. We'll catch you guys. If you're in the YouTube, please give me a thumbs up. It is the only thing keeping me going at this point in my life. And
Did you fall asleep by the pool, or did you pass out?
Did you pass out, Billy? All right.